Welcome to Industry Insights, BBD's video series that offers our clients and industry friends a brief look into important and timely developments in the investment management industry. I'm Rich Wagner, a partner with BBD. Today, I have the great pleasure of speaking with Maureen Quill, Executive Director of Registered Funds for UMB Fund Services. Maureen was recently interviewed for Global Custodian for an article titled, "Don't Fight the 40 Act." As a follow-up to the article, we'll discuss the trend of private fund managers launching registered funds or converting private funds to registered funds, and how private fund managers can best succeed in the highly regulated 40 Act environment. Well, Maureen, thank you for being here, and we appreciate hearing a little bit about UMB and how not to fight the 40 Act.
You're welcome, Rich. Happy to be here to talk to you about this topic.
Great. Well, do you want to tell us a little bit about UMB?
Sure. UMB is a leader in the mutual fund and alternative investment fund services area. We're known for our high-touch client service, our diverse product offering, supporting a spectrum of fund structures and turnkey solutions. We are backed by the strength and stability of our parent company, UMB Financial Corporation. The services that we generally offer are fund accounting, fund administration and tax, transfer agency and investment servicing, distribution, custody, cash management, and other banking products. UMB is ready to service virtually any investment vehicle, allowing our clients to focus on managing money.
Great. Well, thank you very much. So to get into the questions, what are the challenges with a private fund manager moving into the 40 Act space?
Generally, the challenges that we see when private fund managers move into the registered fund space is not understanding that they're playing a different game. It really is different when they move into the registered fund world. They are selling to a different clientele, and there's different regulations around that, and different rules. For example, the way I like to explain it to people is my oldest son, Mitch, was a multi-sport athlete. So he played football in the fall, and then when the season changed and he rolled right into basketball, the first couple games, he'd go in and play the first quarter and end up with 2 fouls. His coach would pull him out and say, "You got to get your head in this game. You got to stop playing football and pushing people around and being physical, and you've got to play a different game. Basketball, to be successful in basketball, you play by different rules." So when you're moving from the private fund world into the registered fund world, you need to understand you're playing a different game and play by the rules of the registered funds.
Being some challenges in the 40 Act space, what are some of the bigger surprises that managers encounter?
I think the biggest surprise is the infrastructure that managers need to build to comply with certain rules that are required for private fund or for registered funds. So the infrastructure they have to build around them is a huge surprise. The infrastructure would include the auditors, hiring a qualified and experienced auditor. I think the legal counsel that they employ is very important. They need someone that's experienced in the 40 Act. There are very discrete rules in the 40 Act, and it takes a while to understand them. So hiring a qualified legal counsel is really important. Along with that, a qualified chief compliance officer is also important. When they surround themselves with the right team and they listen to that team, it'll help them be more successful in the registered fund space.
Great. So how can managers avoid pitfalls?
I think they got to pay attention to 5 important points. They need to make sure that they have a good infrastructure in place, as I discussed earlier, that they adhere to and meet the fixed deadlines, and those are around audits and filings, have specific deadlines that they have to meet. They have to ensure that all shareholders are treated equally, and there's ways to do that, usually by creating different share classes, but they can't have side pocket arrangements or other arrangements that they had in the private world. That doesn't work in the registered fund world. They need to be aware of the tax consequences of funds investments. So moving from a K-1 world to generally in these situations, they move to a 1099 world, is different. And they need to make sure they're managing the tax treatment of different investments in the fund differently for 1099 than they would in the K-1. And they need to make sure that they're hiring a qualified custodian. Private fund managers usually work with their prime broker for custodial needs, and this is different. So a qualified 40 Act custodian is also required.
Great. So how can service providers help the fund managers?
I think when they decide they're going to move into the registered fund space, they need to make sure they hire and work with a service provider who's experienced with working with private fund managers who have moved into the registered fund space. Those service providers can provide guidance, structure, introduce you to qualified and experienced legal teams, auditors, and chief compliance officers. And they're all aimed at helping you navigate the regulated world, manage your expenses, and set you up for success.
Great. And you know what, thinking about it, you built that team around you to help you out with the 40X. So I'm always thinking communication is very important. If you have a question, picking up the phone, talking to the administrator, talking to the attorneys, talking to the auditors, making sure you're following the rules, that communication is super important, especially for a new manager that's not familiar with the 40 Act.
I agree. Communication is really important, and that could start with a project plan that your service provider can put together for you about the steps and all the different things you need to go through in order to launch your registered fund product. That it can take more time. You have to get the SEC involved. All of those things are different than what they were using when they were in the private fund world. And understanding the different steps you need to go through before you can launch the product is really important.
Great. So, is there any room for interpretation in the 40 Act?
No, there really isn't, and I wish there was. We've seen many people try to spend money and time and work with their lawyers to try an easier, faster, or less expensive way around some of these rules, and frankly, it all becomes a waste of time. This rule has been around for 8 decades. It's tried and true. We know what we need to do in order to comply with it. The rules are rules. They're not suggestions. They are what we need to do in order to make sure that you have a fully compliant registered product. You need to really, in the end, understand the game you're playing when you're entering the registered fund space. You need to establish a capable team around you, listen to them, and in the end, really listen to your coaches, that team you've established around you, and don't get in the way of your own success.
Well, Maureen, thank you very much for your time today and for your helpful insight.
Thank you, Rich.